When my 36-year-old son learned that I had inherited $15 million, his wife did not even bother to soften her reaction. She said flatly, with a look of pure contempt, "That old man does not deserve that kind of money. It should be ours." Together they insisted that I hand over every cent, arguing that they were far more entitled to it than I was. After decades of putting my own needs last so they could be happy, something inside me finally shifted. I understood, with painful clarity, that it was time for them to learn what unchecked greed truly cost. What followed made them regret every cruel word they spoke. The delicate crystal glasses chimed softly as my son Daniel cleared the dinner table, moving cautiously around the leftovers from our Christmas meal. Turkey bones glistened under the amber glow of the dining room chandelier, and across from me sat his wife, Lauren. Her smile was still carefully arranged on her face, but her eyes were sharp and calculating, as if she were solving a problem I did not yet understand. "Dad, you really went all out tonight," Daniel said, juggling several plates against his chest. That was the exact moment everything changed. His elbow clipped the edge of my leather briefcase resting on the side table. The case tipped, slid, and fell to the hardwood floor with a dull thud, bursting open on impact. Papers scattered in every direction, official documents fanning out like dry leaves in autumn. I watched Daniel's expression shift the instant his eyes landed on the top page. His face drained of color, and its breath caught in a sharp, unmistakable gasp. 15! He started, then stopped, unable to finish the sentence. I reacted instinctively, dropping to my knees to gather the documents, but Lauren was already leaning forward, craning her neck to see. The twinkling lights of the Christmas tree reflected off the stark white pages as I scrambled to collect them, my fingers suddenly clumsy and uncooperative. "Dad," Daniel said, his voice breaking with disbelief, did I just read that right?" Lauren set her fork down with deliberate precision, the metal clicking against her plate. "Read what right, sweetheart?" she asked, her tone falsely innocent. I straightened up, pressing the papers tightly against my chest. "It is nothing you need to worry about." $15 million, Daniel blurted out. "That document says $15 million? The silence that followed felt heavy and oppressive, like the charged air before a violent storm. Lauren's carefully painted smile finally fractured, revealing something greedy and ravenous beneath the surface. "Your brother?" she asked softly, her voice suddenly smooth and probing. "The one who passed away?" I nodded and eased myself back into my chair, the documents now secured in my lap. "Thomas died 3 months ago. The estate finally cleared probate late last week." Daniel collapsed into his chair as if his legs could no longer support him. $15 million, he murmured. "You never mentioned—" Lauren's hand slid onto his arm, her fingers tapping against his sleeve in a steady rhythm. "I mean, we knew your brother was successful, but still." I folded the papers slowly, carefully, buying myself a moment. "Thomas built his software company from the ground up. He sold it 2 years before he died." My voice sounded distant, almost unfamiliar to my own ears. "He never married. He had no children. I was all the family he had left." Lauren did not look away from the documents for a single second. That is incredible, Richard. What a blessing for you." The word blessing lingered between us like smoke. Daniel stared down at his hands, his mind clearly racing. I noticed Lauren's grip tighten on his arm, her nails pressing hard enough to leave faint crescent shapes in the fabric of his shirt. "Dad," Daniel said at last, choosing his words with unnatural care, "you really do not need all that money. I mean, at your age—" His words hit me like a bucket of ice water. I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I raised alone after his mother, Evelyn, passed away, and I barely recognized him. "And what exactly are you suggesting?" I asked quietly. Lauren leaned forward, her voice taking on that syrupy tone she used whenever she wanted something. "We are family, Richard. Family is supposed to help each other, and with little Noah and Lily to think about." She gestured vaguely toward the framed photos of my grandchildren sitting on the fireplace mantel. Their education, their future. We could really use support. "We have been struggling," Daniel added, his eyes fixed firmly on the table instead of my face. I placed the papers neatly on the table between us, my movements slow and intentional. The money just became available. I have not even decided what I'm going to do with it. "But surely you understand that sharing it would be the right thing to do," Lauren replied. Her smile was slipping now, the sweetness stretched thin. "We are young. We have plans, ambitions. We could actually do something meaningful with that kind of money." The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9 o'clock, its deep, resonant notes echoing through the house and marking time that suddenly felt incredibly precious. I studied my son and his wife, truly studied them, and felt something cold and heavy settle in my chest. "This is not an appropriate conversation for Christmas dinner," I said at last. Lauren let out a sharp, brittle laugh. "Money is always appropriate when it affects family." Daniel nodded, regaining some confidence. "Lauren has a point, Dad. We have been struggling while you have been comfortable. Maybe it is time to think about your grandchildren's future." I stood up slowly, my joints protesting the movement. The papers rustled softly as I gathered them back into my briefcase. "I think we should finish cleaning up. You're staying the night, correct? The guest room upstairs is ready." Lauren and Daniel exchanged a quick look, charged with meaning I was only beginning to grasp. "Of course we are staying," Lauren said smoothly. "We have so much more to discuss." I walked toward my bedroom with the documents clutched tightly in my hand, leaving them behind to deal with the dishes. As I disappeared down the hallway, I heard their whispered conversation resume, urgent and hungry. Suddenly, my home felt smaller than it ever had before. Later, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling as the digital clock cast a dull green glow across the room. 11:43 at night. Nearly 4 hours had passed since dinner ended, and sleep felt impossibly far away. The old house creaked and sighed as it settled into the December cold. Above me, footsteps moved across the floor of the guest room, light but purposeful. Then came voices, muffled by the thin, poorly insulated ceiling I had never gotten around to fixing. I tried to ignore them. They were married, after all. They had every reason to talk. Then Lauren's voice cut through the floorboards, sharp enough to make me sit bolt upright. "That old man does not deserve $15 million. My blood turned to ice. I held my breath, straining to hear. "Lauren, keep your voice down," Daniel whispered. "He is asleep." "He is not," she snapped quietly, "and I am right. He wasted his entire life being ordinary. That boring engineering job, this small, outdated house." Her words dripped with scorn. "We are young. We could actually do something with that money. The floor creaked as she paced. I pressed my ear against the ceiling, my heart pounding violently in my chest. "Maybe you're right," Daniel said after a pause. Those 4 words broke something inside me. "He has been pretty selfish with money lately," Daniel continued. "Remember when we asked him to help with the car payments?" Selfish. My own son had just called me selfish. I clenched the bedsheet so tightly that my knuckles burned and turned pale. Above me, Lauren's voice grew steadier, sharper, as if she had gained momentum simply by saying it out loud. "Exactly," she said with confidence. "We have been struggling while he sits there comfortable. That inheritance should be shared. We deserve it far more than he does." A pause followed. "But how do we get him to agree?" Daniel asked. "You saw how he reacted tonight." "Leave that to me," Lauren replied, her tone shifting into something colder and more deliberate. "Men his age are easy to influence, especially when they are lonely. And if kindness does not work—" She hesitated, and I heard the mattress above me creak as she sat down. "We still have other options." My pulse thudded in my ears. "What kind of options?" Daniel asked cautiously. "Legal ones," she said. "Think about it. He is getting older. Maybe he is not thinking as clearly as he used to. We could challenge his mental competence, claim undue influence from his brother. There are precedents for that." My hands began to tremble, not from fear, but from a cold, focused rage that spread through me like ice water. "I do not know, Lauren," Daniel said. "That feels extreme." $15 million, she replied flatly. "That is extreme money for someone who will probably be dead in 10 years anyway." The cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. 10 years. That was all the life she believed I had left. And even that sounded generous to her. "We could pay off the house," she continued, her voice drifting into something almost dreamy. "Buy a new car. Take that Europe trip we always talk about. Noah and Lily could go to private school. We could actually live." "And if he says no again?" Daniel asked quietly. Lauren laughed, low and dangerous. "He will not. Trust me. I know how to handle men like your father. He has been alone too long. He is vulnerable. A little guilt about not being present enough for his grandchildren. A few tears about our financial stress. He will give in." The bed spring squeaked as Daniel joined her. "You really think we deserve that money more than him?" he asked. "I know we do," she answered without hesitation. "What is he going to do with it? Sit in that house and count it? We have our entire lives ahead of us. He already had his chance." The digital clock on my nightstand glowed 12:17 in the morning when their voices finally softened into whispers, then faded into silence. I did not sleep. I lay there until dawn crept through the curtains, replaying every sentence, every casual dismissal of my worth, every calm calculation of my death. By the time I heard movement upstairs around 7 o'clock, something essential inside me had shifted. The devoted father who had given everything to an ungrateful son no longer existed. In his place stood someone far more dangerous, a man with nothing left to lose and $15 million to defend. I rose from bed and made coffee, my actions calm, deliberate, almost surgical. The kitchen filled with the rich, familiar aroma as I sat at the small table and waited for them to come downstairs. They believed they understood me. They believed I was weak. They were wrong. Steam curled up from my coffee mug in the pale morning light, but I could not taste a thing. The kitchen felt different, tighter somehow, as if the walls had crept inward while I slept. Above me, I heard Lauren and Daniel stirring, their voices hushed and conspiratorial. I closed my eyes. My mind drifted back to Evelyn's hospital room 10 years earlier. The steady beeping of machines filled the air as I held her cold hand. She knew she was dying. So did I. Daniel had visited twice in 3 weeks. "Take care of Daniel," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But do not forget to live for yourself, Richard." I had promised her I would, another promise I never kept. After Evelyn passed, Daniel was too overwhelmed to help with the funeral. I chose the casket, I wrote the obituary, I organized the service. He arrived in a wrinkled suit, his eyes dry, and left immediately after the burial to go stay with Lauren. I mourned alone. Before that, there was college. 4 years of 80-hour weeks at the engineering firm, every overtime shift, every weekend project, $80,000 in student loans I co-signed and later paid off myself when Daniel could not find steady work after graduation. He graduated at the top of his class and thanked his professors, his girlfriend, his study group. He did not thank me. I watched from the back of the auditorium, proud and invisible. 5 years ago, they were renting a cramped apartment, constantly complaining about thin walls and loud neighbors. Lauren dropped hints about buying a house like breadcrumbs, carefully guiding me where she wanted me to go. "If only we had help with a down payment," she would sigh. "The market is so competitive." I liquidated my retirement investments. $150,000. My safety net, my future. I handed it over so they could have granite countertops and a 2-car garage. Lauren said, "Thank you," once, then immediately started hinting about furniture money. I kept renting my small 1-bedroom place while they hosted dinner parties in their spacious home. The daily sacrifices hurt even more than the big ones. $2,000 a month in temporary loans that were never repaid. Free babysitting every weekend while they dined at restaurants I could not afford. Grocery runs during Daniel's long stretches of unemployment. Car repairs, medical bills, vacation funds. I had become an automated teller machine with a pulse. Last month, Daniel complained that my house was too small for family gatherings. Lauren rolled her eyes at the practical Christmas gifts I had saved months to afford. "Your dad always buys such boring presents," she told her sister on the phone, unaware I was standing in the kitchen. I opened my eyes and did the math. 35 years of sacrifice, tuition, housing, monthly support, emergencies, gifts, childcare, groceries, over $400,000. My savings, my retirement, my future, all given freely to a son who now labeled me selfish. Evelyn would have been ashamed of what Daniel had become, but she would have been even more ashamed of me for allowing it. I had created this by being too generous, by teaching him that love meant money and family meant taking without giving. And now they wanted my brother's inheritance too. $15 million they had never earned and never deserved. The coffee had gone cold in my hands. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, landing on a framed photograph of Evelyn on the counter. Her smile looked sad in the morning light. I heard footsteps on the staircase and felt a dull sense of disappointment settle in my chest. Lauren's heels struck the wooden steps with sharp, deliberate clicks, Daniel's heavier footsteps trailing behind her. They were coming down for breakfast, fully prepared to continue the conversation from the night before. But the man sitting at that kitchen table was not the same man who had overheard their plans in the dark. The generous trusting father who raised his son with open hands, had disappeared sometime between midnight and sunrise. In his place sat someone harder, someone who finally understood that love without respect was nothing more than exploitation. I took a slow, steady breath and prepared myself to face them, knowing this meeting might be the last time we ever sat at the same table as family. They believed they were walking into a conversation with a lonely old man they could guilt and manipulate. Instead, they were about to meet a father who had finally stopped giving. Lauren entered the kitchen as if she owned it, her heels clicking against the linoleum with practiced precision. She had chosen her outfit carefully, a soft blue sweater that made her eyes look gentle and innocent, her hair pulled back in a way that suggested fragility. She was armored for battle. "Good morning, Richard," she said warmly. "You are up early." Daniel followed behind her, shuffling in with his shoulders hunched, his gaze fixed on the floor. He looked like a child caught doing something shameful. "Could not sleep?" I asked calmly, nodding toward the coffee pot. "Help yourselves." Lauren poured 2 cups, her movements smooth and unhurried. "This big house must feel lonely sometimes," she said lightly. "All these empty rooms, just you rattling around in here." I took a sip of my coffee and said nothing. "We have been talking," she continued, settling into the chair across from me, "about last night, about your inheritance." "Have you?" I asked. Daniel finally glanced at me, then quickly looked away again. "Lauren makes some good points, Dad. About family, about sharing blessings." Lauren's hand slid onto his arm, her fingers stroking him in encouragement. "We are not asking for charity, Richard. We are talking about family responsibility. You raised Daniel to work hard and build a future, but sometimes even hard-working people need help." I set my mug down carefully. "And what kind of help are you suggesting?" Her smile widened, sharp and predatory. "Well, you do not actually need $15 million, do you? At your age, what would you even do with all that money?" "That is not your concern," I replied evenly. The sweetness drained from her voice. "But it is our concern. We are family, and family looks out for each other." Daniel leaned forward, finally finding his nerve. "Dad, think about Noah and Lily, their college education, their future. Do you not want to help your grandchildren?" "I have been helping them their entire lives," I said quietly. "I have been helping both of you for decades." Lauren's expression slipped. "Sure, you have helped here and there, but this is different. This is real money, life-changing money." "For whom?" I asked. "For all of us," she snapped, her voice rising before she forced it back into a smile. "We are young, Richard. We have plans, dreams. We could actually do something meaningful with that inheritance." I stood and walked to the window overlooking my small backyard. The December sky was gray and heavy, perfectly matching my mood. "You know what I think," I said without turning around. "I think you both believe you deserve my brother's money more than I do." The silence behind me was overwhelming. "That is not—" Daniel started. "Yes, it is," I said, turning to face them. "You think I am too old, too ordinary, too boring to deserve $15 million. You think I would just let it sit in a bank while you chase your dreams?" Lauren's composure finally cracked. "Well, would you not?" she shot back. "What are you going to do with it, Richard? Buy a bigger house? Travel the world? You have never wanted anything." "Maybe that is because I spent 35 years wanting things for my son instead," I replied. Daniel flinched as if I had struck him. "We deserve some of that money," Lauren continued, her voice hard and sharp now. "We have struggled while you have been comfortable. We are the ones raising young children with futures ahead of them. You are just going to hoard it like some old miser." "Based on what do you deserve it?" I asked calmly. "Based on being family," she snapped. "Based on being young and full of potential instead of old and useless." The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel's eyes widened in horror as he realized she had gone too far. "Lauren," he whispered, but she no longer cared. "It is true," she said. "What is he going to do with $15 million besides count it? We could actually use it." I walked back to the table, my movements slow and controlled. "Is that truly what you both think? That I am old and useless?" Daniel stared at the tabletop. "Dad, that is not what she meant." "Yes, it is," I said, sitting down across from them. "And you agree with her, do you not? You think you deserve your uncle's money more than your father does." After a long pause, Daniel spoke quietly. "Maybe we do." There it was. The truth, finally spoken in full daylight. Lauren reached across the table, grasping for my hand. "Richard, please, think about your grandchildren. Think about their future. Do not be selfish." I pulled my hand away. "Selfish?" I repeated. "We will contest this legally if we have to," Lauren said, desperation creeping into her voice. "You are getting older, maybe not thinking as clearly as you should. Thomas could have unduly influenced you." I stood, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Get out." They froze. "Get out of my house. Now." Lauren's mouth fell open. "Richard, you cannot be serious. Pack your things and leave. Both of you." Daniel half rose from his chair. "Dad, please, let us talk about this reasonably." "There is nothing reasonable about what you are asking," I said coldly. "And nothing reasonable about what you believe you deserve." I walked to the front door and pulled it open. "You have 10 minutes." I watched through the window as they loaded their belongings into their car. Lauren's face twisted with rage. Daniel looked lost and confused. She slammed her door hard enough to make the windows rattle. As they drove away, her voice carried back through the open window. "This is not over, you selfish old bastard." I stood alone in my quiet house, surrounded by silence, and smiled for the first time all morning. They had started a war they could not win. I walked to my desk, picked up my phone, and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Thompson and Associates, Legal Services. It was time to start making calls. 3 full weeks of silence followed their forced departure, long enough that I almost convinced myself they had finally accepted defeat. That illusion shattered one quiet morning while I sat in my favorite armchair, newspaper folded neatly in my lap, coffee steaming on the side table. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent, cutting through the calm like breaking glass. The man on my doorstep wore a neatly pressed uniform and held a thick clipboard stuffed with official-looking documents. "Richard Coleman?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "I have legal papers that require your signature." He extended the clipboard with practiced efficiency. "Right here, please." My hand trembled just slightly as I signed. The envelope he handed me felt heavier than paper should, weighted with something ominous. I watched his car drive away before closing the door and locking it behind me. Inside, legal letterhead caught the morning light. Petition for determination of incapacity. The words stared back at me, bold and merciless. My vision blurred as I read further. Petitioners Daniel R. Coleman and Lauren M. Coleman hereby request that this honorable court determine respondent Richard D. Coleman lacks the mental capacity to manage his financial affairs. The page swam. Dementia, irrational decision-making, inability to manage finances. They were trying to have me legally declared mentally incompetent. I sank into a kitchen chair, spreading the documents across the table with shaking hands. The court date glared up at me like a threat. March 12th, 2025. Less than 3 weeks away. Attached were sworn statements from neighbors I barely knew, claiming they had observed troubling behavior and signs of mental decline. According to the paperwork, a woman named Mrs. Franklin, who lived several houses down, claimed she had seen me wandering my yard talking to myself and repeatedly forgetting to collect my mail. I had exchanged nothing more than polite waves with her over the years. The so-called medical evidence was even worse. A report from Dr. Elaine Morris stated that during a consultation I had never attended, I displayed significant cognitive impairment, confusion about basic financial concepts, and an inability to recall recent events. My hands curled into fists. It was all fabricated, but the cruelest blow waited on page 4. Petitioners have secured respondent assets totaling $500,000 pending the court's determination to prevent further financial harm. They had frozen $500,000 of my money, my checking account, my savings, my investments, locked away on the strength of lies. I read the petition 3 times. Each pass fueled my anger further. They were not just coming for the inheritance anymore. They were trying to erase my independence, my dignity, my right to be seen as a competent human being. The phone felt cold against my ear as I dialed. "Hayes and Morgan Legal," the receptionist answered. "This is Richard Coleman. I need to speak with Julia Hayes immediately." A moment later, her voice came on the line. "Richard, what is wrong? You sound—" "They are trying to have me declared mentally incompetent," I said flatly. "I have legal documents in front of me that are complete fabrications." There was a pause. Then Julia's voice sharpened, all professionalism. "Do not say anything else over the phone. Can you be in my office within the hour?" "I will be there in 30 minutes. I gathered the paperwork, my hands steady now with purpose. 3 weeks earlier, I believed the worst thing my son could do was demand my money. I had been painfully naive. They were trying to strip away everything that made me human. As I drove toward downtown Boise, one thought repeated in my mind. If they wanted to fight dirty, they had just taught me the rules. But they had made one critical mistake. They believed they were attacking a confused old man. They were about to discover they had declared war on someone with nothing left to lose, and 15 million reasons to fight back. I arrived at Hayes and Morgan 15 minutes early, carrying a leather folder I had assembled through a sleepless night. Julia's office smelled faintly of coffee and polished leather, its walls lined with thick legal volumes that suddenly felt like weapons instead of books. "Show me everything," she said, settling behind her desk and sliding her glasses onto her nose. I opened the folder carefully. 5 years of bank statements, every transaction organized and labeled, investment records showing consistent, rational decision-making, medical records from my annual physicals and cognitive screenings. Julia's eyebrows lifted as she turned page after page. "Richard, these financial records are spotless. Your portfolio performance is stronger than what many professional managers achieve." Then she placed my documents next to the petition. "This doctor, Elaine Morris. I do not recognize the name," she said. Her fingers moved quickly across her keyboard. "She is not board certified in geriatrics. In fact," she paused, "she is a pediatrician based in Eugene." My jaw tightened. "Lauren's college roommate. I remember her from their wedding." Julia nodded grimly. "That tracks." She examined the witness statements next, pulling out a magnifying glass. "Look closely at these signatures," she said, sliding them toward me. "Same slant, same exaggerated loops. These were written by the same hand." Lauren's handwriting had always been unmistakable, too decorative, too deliberate. "This is not just a weak petition," Julia said, leaning back. "This is outright fraud, but we need to move fast. I want you medically evaluated immediately to destroy their claims." 2 hours later, I sat across from Dr. Samuel Keaton at St. Luke's Medical Center. He was thorough and calm, with kind eyes that reminded me of my father. "I am going to administer comprehensive cognitive testing," he explained. "Memory, reasoning, mathematics, problem-solving, the full battery." The tests felt like mental gymnastics. Pattern recognition, word association, numerical reasoning, short and long-term memory exercises. To my surprise, I enjoyed it. My old engineering instincts kicked in, clicking through problems with a sharpness I had not felt in years. Dr. Keaton reviewed the results and smiled. "Richard," he said, "your cognitive function is not just normal for your age. It is exceptional. Your working memory scores fall in the 95th percentile. I would gladly testify that you are sharper than most 40-year-olds I evaluate." Back at Julia's office, she laid my medical report beside the forged petition. "This is beautiful," she said. "Their case is not just weak, it is offensive." I pulled out my phone and slid it across the desk. "I have something else," I said. "I recorded several conversations with Daniel and Lauren over the past 2 years." Julia's eyes lit up. "This is a one-party consent state," she said slowly. "What kind of conversations?" "Lauren discussing my money, calling me selfish for not giving them more. Daniel agreeing with her, talking about what they would do with my inheritance." Julia leaned back, a slow smile forming. "Then they just buried themselves." "And I recorded them the night after Christmas," I said quietly, "through the ceiling, planning this entire scheme." Julia looked up from her notes, and for the first time since I arrived, she smiled without restraint. "Richard, you just handed me everything we need," she said, tapping her pen against the legal pad. "Not only to have their petition dismissed, but to pursue criminal charges for fraud and elder abuse." She pulled the pad closer and began writing rapidly, her handwriting sharp and decisive. "We file a motion to dismiss with prejudice by 5 o'clock today," she said aloud as she wrote. "Tomorrow morning, we file a defamation countersuit and submit a fraud report to the district attorney's office. By the end of the week, they will be begging you to forgive them." I stood, feeling lighter than I had in weeks, as if something heavy had finally been lifted from my chest. "Julia," I said, pausing at the door, "there is one more thing." She looked up. "I want to call in every loan I ever made to Daniel. 35 years of financial support. Most of it documented as loans, not gifts." Her smile turned sharp, almost predatory. "How much are we talking about?" $412,000, I said, plus interest. We shook hands outside her office building. "I will file our response by 5 o'clock today," she said confidently. "By this time tomorrow, they will understand they picked the wrong fight." I walked to my car and pulled out my phone, scrolling to Daniel's contact. My thumb hovered over his name for a long moment. Then I locked the screen and put the phone away. Let them believe they were winning just a little longer. The trap was already set. All that remained was waiting for them to walk into it. When I returned home, I loosened my tie with a deep sense of satisfaction. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control. I went straight to my home office, the spare bedroom I had converted decades ago, where I balanced budgets and planned projects for most of my career, and powered up my computer. The glow of the screen lit my face as I opened a new spreadsheet. At the top, I typed a title: Project Justice. My engineering background had taught me that any complex problem could be broken down into manageable components. This situation was no different. I needed data, structure, and a systematic approach. I started with what I trusted most: numbers. Column A, date. Column B, amount. Column C, purpose. Column D, loan or gift. 35 years of financial support to Daniel filled the screen in orderly rows. College tuition, $45,000. Living expenses during college, $35,000. Post-graduation emergency loans, $67,000. House down payment, $50,000. Monthly support payments, $72,000 over 3 years. The total at the bottom made me pause. $412,000. Nearly $500,000 given to a son who now called me selfish. But the patterns told a more important story than the numbers themselves. Every major contribution was followed within months by another request. Every time I said yes, their expectations grew larger. I had been feeding an addiction to my money, and like any addiction, it required increasingly larger doses. I cross-referenced the dates with my calendar records. During Daniel's supposed unemployment last year, when they claimed to be desperate, I found evidence he had been working construction 3 days a week. When Lauren insisted they could not afford school supplies for the children, I discovered social media posts from the same week showing her at a luxury spa. They had not just started lying recently, they had been lying for years. I opened a second spreadsheet and titled it Vulnerability Assessment. Lauren's weaknesses were immediately obvious. Her social media accounts revealed everything: a desperate need for status, constant validation. Her entire identity revolved around appearing successful to her peers, expensive purchases, exotic vacations, designer clothing. Daniel's weaknesses ran deeper. He had never learned how to stand up to anyone, least of all his wife. His construction work was seasonal and unreliable. Without my financial support, their lifestyle would collapse within months, but their greatest vulnerability was entitlement. They had never faced real consequences. Every mistake had been cushioned with my money. Every poor decision had been softened by my generosity. I pulled out a legal pad and began sketching my strategy in flowchart form, the same way I had planned construction projects for decades. Phase 1, legal defense complete. Julia had dismantled their incompetency petition and prepared aggressive countermeasures. Phase 2, financial pressure ready. I had full documentation supporting $412,000 in legitimate debt. Phase 3, social consequences pending. Lauren's obsession with image would become her downfall once her lies were exposed publicly. Phase 4, economic reality. Execution pending. Without my support, their artificial lifestyle would collapse. Each phase had measurable goals and clear outcomes. This was not revenge. This was accountability they had never experienced. I opened Lauren's social media profile and began methodically capturing screenshots. Her timeline told a story of hypocrisy that would shock anyone who believed the narrative she was about to spread. March 2024. Photos from a Cabo vacation captioned, "Living our best life." Posted the same week, they asked me for grocery money. June 2024. Lauren modeling $300 shoes, ranting about people who hoard money instead of enjoying life. September 2024. Daniel's new motorcycle parked in the driveway, purchased during his so-called unemployment. I saved everything, carefully labeling timestamps and organizing files into a growing evidence folder designed to destroy her credibility. By the time I closed my laptop, the clock read 10:30 at night. 3 neatly labeled folders sat on my desk. Phase 1, complete. Phase 2, ready. Phase 3, pending. I picked up my phone, scrolled to Daniel's number, then set it back down without calling. Not yet. Margaret used to tell me I was too soft, too forgiving. She would be proud of the man I was becoming now. Methodical, strategic, unwilling to be manipulated. Tomorrow, phase 2 would begin. The next morning, my coffee was interrupted by my phone buzzing nonstop, vibrating across the table like an angry insect. Message after message poured in from neighbors and former colleagues. "Richard, have you seen Lauren's post? This cannot be true, can it? Please call me when you get this." With a sinking feeling, I opened Facebook. Lauren's post sat at the top of my feed, already shared 47 times in just 3 hours. The headline read, "Heartbroken by family elder abuse. Please share." Below it was a carefully crafted masterpiece of manipulation. Photos of supposedly empty kitchen cabinets, overdue utility bills, images of her children dressed in worn clothing, their faces carefully chosen to evoke pity. The story she told beneath them bore no resemblance to reality, but it was emotionally devastating, and that was exactly the point. My father-in-law inherited $15 million and refuses to help his struggling family. While he hoards his wealth, my children eat cereal for dinner and worry about losing their home. He has turned his back on the grandchildren who love him, choosing money over family. Please pray for us during this difficult time. By the time I finished reading Lauren's post, 89 comments had already piled up beneath it. How could he be so heartless? Those poor babies. Money always changes people. Someone should report him to social services. My hand shook as I began capturing screenshots, carefully documenting every lie with visible timestamps. But even as I worked, I knew the damage was already spreading through our small community like a fast-moving fire. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Margaret Patterson, my neighbor of 15 years. "Richard," she said cautiously, "I do not understand what is happening with your family." "Margaret, there is more to this story than what you are seeing online," I replied. "But the photos of the children," she said softly, "they look so thin, so sad." I closed my eyes and took a steady breath. "Margaret, have you actually seen Noah and Lily recently? At the grocery store? The park?" There was a pause. "Well, no, but they are healthy children, always well fed." "Lauren is using old photos," I said. "Probably from last winter when Noah had the flu." "I suppose that makes sense," she replied, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping into her voice. The manipulation was working exactly as Lauren intended. That afternoon at the grocery store, conversations died the moment I entered an aisle. The cashier, who had always greeted me warmly, avoided my eyes. My neighbor Jim crossed the street rather than acknowledge me. Lauren's story was spreading faster than truth ever could. Social media had turned gossip into a weapon and my reputation into collateral damage. That evening, I sat down at my desk and prepared for methodical work. If Lauren wanted to wage war online, she had chosen the wrong battlefield. I had spent 30 years solving complex engineering problems, and I had unlimited patience when it came to dismantling false narratives. I opened her profile and began scrolling backward through months of posts. The contradictions were astonishing. December 15th, 2024. Just booked our Christmas ski trip. Cannot wait for family fun. Posted 5 days before she claimed her children were starving. November 28th, 2024. Photos of Lauren displaying a new designer handbag collection easily worth $2,000. Posted during their so-called financial crisis. October 10th, 2024. Daniel posing proudly with expensive new hunting equipment captioned, "New gear for the season." Posted while they claimed to be behind on their mortgage. I cross-referenced every post with their requests for money, building a timeline that exposed her hypocrisy in stark detail. Every plea for help was contradicted by evidence of indulgence. But Lauren's real strength lay in her audience. Dozens of equally entitled suburban mothers fed off the outrage, sharing her story without hesitation or fact-checking, embellishing it with their own assumptions. "I always knew there was something off about that man," her friend Jennifer wrote. "Rich people are so selfish," added Maria. "Those children deserve better." I continued documenting everything, building a comprehensive archive of lies, exaggerations, and contradictions. More importantly, I was learning the rules of Lauren's game. She believed social media was about emotion and manipulation. She was correct. What she forgot was that every post, every comment, every share left behind digital fingerprints, evidence that could be traced, preserved, and presented. By 11 o'clock that night, I had compiled 47 screenshots of contradictory posts, 23 examples of financial hypocrisy, and 15 outright false claims about their circumstances. My phone showed 23 missed calls from neighbors and acquaintances. Some sounded concerned, others accusatory. I did not return any of them. Not yet. I opened my laptop and began drafting a message to friends and neighbors. Halfway through, I stopped and deleted it all. Tomorrow would be soon enough. Every lie Lauren posted, every emotional exaggeration she shared, every manipulative comment she encouraged was ammunition for what came next. She believed she was winning the battle for public opinion. What she did not realize was that she was building the evidence that would completely destroy her credibility. The trap was nearly ready. She just needed to step a little deeper into it. The community center buzzed with an unusual energy when I arrived for our monthly neighborhood association meeting. Folding chairs filled the room, nearly every seat occupied. Lauren had requested the meeting focus on elder abuse awareness, her final flourish, or so she believed. I had also requested 15 minutes on the agenda to address what I referred to as recent misunderstandings. The manila folder in my hands felt heavy and solid. The label read, "Financial History 1995 to 2025. Lauren had transformed the front of the room into a theatrical display. Poster boards lined the wall, covered with enlarged photographs of empty cabinets, overdue bills, and carefully selected images of sad-looking children. Her props told a story designed to pull at every sympathetic heart in the room. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. "I never imagined I would have to expose private family matters publicly. But when children are suffering, silence is not an option." More than 30 neighbors filled the chairs, their faces already softening with concern. Lauren knew her audience. She gestured dramatically toward her displays. "These photos show the reality of financial elder abuse." And that was when I stood up. "While my father-in-law hoards $15 million, our children are eating cereal for dinner," Lauren continued dramatically. "Our electricity was almost shut off last week." A wave of angry murmurs rolled through the room. How awful! Those poor kids. Someone needs to do something. I stayed seated in the back row, calm and still, writing notes, waiting patiently. I had learned that the most effective response comes after people fully reveal themselves. "I have documentation proving all of this," Lauren said, lifting a stack of official-looking papers high in the air. "Bank records showing his extreme wealth while we struggled to afford necessities. Medical records confirming his declining mental state. Witness statements from concerned neighbors." Her performance was polished and emotional. By the time she finished, nearly half the room looked ready to call social services themselves. "Mr. Coleman," said Margaret Patterson, who chaired the meeting, "Lauren has asked that we address this serious issue. Would you like to respond?" I rose slowly and walked to the podium Lauren had just vacated, carrying my folder with deliberate care. Her confident smile told me she believed the outcome was already decided. "Thank you, Margaret," I said evenly. "Yes, I do have a response." I opened my folder. Lauren mentioned documentation. I brought 30 years of financial records. Let us review actual facts. I spread bank statements across the display table. These records show monthly transfers of $2,000 to Daniel Coleman for the past 3 years. That totals $72,000. The mood in the room shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Lauren's smile twitched. "This receipt documents a $150,000 down payment for Daniel and Lauren's house, paid directly from my savings account in September of 2019. New murmurs filled the room now, confused, questioning. College tuition payments, $45,000. Living expenses during college, $35,000. Post-graduation emergency loans, $67,000. I could see neighbors silently adding the numbers, their expressions tightening. The total financial support I have provided to my son and daughter-in-law over 35 years is $412,000. The silence was absolute. Now, I continued, Lauren referenced social media documentation. I connected my laptop to the community center's projector. Let us look at her public posts. The screen filled with images of beach resorts, expensive meals, designer shopping bags. The timestamps did not lie. March 15th, 2024, I said, captioned, "Living Our Best Life in Paradise," posted the same week they requested grocery money because they claimed they could not afford food. Gasps rippled through the crowd. June 8th, 2024. Lauren displaying $300 shoes while criticizing people who hoard money, posted during their alleged financial crisis. Lauren jumped to her feet. Those posts are being taken out of context. You are manipulating this. September 27th, 2024, I continued calmly. Daniel's new motorcycle, purchased during his unemployment period when I was paying their mortgage. Margaret Patterson raised her hand. Lauren, you told me last week that Richard never helped you financially. You said he was heartless. I did not mean it like that, Lauren stammered. Other voices joined in. She showed me photos of her designer purse last month. Did they not just remodel their kitchen? Panic flashed across Lauren's face. You are all taking his side because he has money, she snapped. No, I replied quietly. They are questioning your story because it does not align with the evidence. Daniel, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. Lauren, maybe we should leave. I am not finished, she hissed. These records could be fake. Social media can be hacked. But the room had already turned. The sympathy that once flowed toward her had shifted toward me. Neighbors approached, embarrassed, apologetic. Richard, we are sorry. We should have asked for your side. You deserved better than this. I packed my materials carefully, accepting their apologies with calm dignity. The truth had done exactly what it always does when given room to breathe. As Lauren stormed toward the exit, dragging Daniel behind her, Margaret stepped closer. Richard, she said quietly, I think there is more you should know about what Lauren has been saying around town. I looked up, suddenly alert. It was clear this was not finished yet. Daniel arrived at the construction site early Monday morning and immediately sensed something was wrong. Conversation stopped when he approached. His co-workers avoided eye contact. The usual joking silence was replaced by tension. His supervisor, Carlos Vega, stepped out of the office trailer holding a clipboard, his expression serious. Daniel, we need to talk. My office. The plastic chair creaked as Daniel sat down, dread settling in his stomach. You are a solid worker, Carlos began, but we have a problem. 3 clients have called since Friday asking for different crews. Daniel swallowed. Why? They are uncomfortable with the family situation, Carlos said. Word travels fast in construction. That neighborhood meeting made waves. I can explain, Daniel said weakly. I am sure you can, Carlos replied, but I have a business to protect. I can offer unpaid leave while things calm down. He did not finish the sentence. Daniel's hands trembled as he called Lauren from the parking lot. They basically fired me, he said when she answered. The neighborhood thing spread to my job sites. Her voice came back sharp and panicked. How is that even legal? It does not matter, Daniel said. It already happened. As he drove home, the illusion they had built began collapsing around him. Without steady income, how could they maintain the lifestyle Lauren demanded? At home, Lauren stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at her phone. Her social media world had imploded overnight. Friend requests withdrawn. Group chats gone. Former allies now silent or openly critical. No one is answering me, she said hollowly. Jennifer, Maria, Susan, they are all avoiding me. She tried posting again, scrambling to regain control of the narrative, but the response was minimal and skeptical. Her credibility was gone. At the grocery store that afternoon, former friends turned down aisles to avoid her. Conversations died when she approached. The isolation was total. Back at home, Lauren spread their bills across the kitchen table, arranging them like a grim puzzle she could no longer solve. And for the first time, the consequences were real. Without Daniel's income, the numbers collapsed immediately. Credit card statements laid bare what Lauren could no longer deny. Their entire lifestyle had been propped up by my money for years. Money that was never coming again. "We cannot survive without his help," she finally admitted, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. "We have been living far beyond our means for a long time." Daniel stared at the paperwork spread across the kitchen table, finally seeing the truth in black and white. Car payments, revolving credit balances, the mortgage, every obligation had been calculated with the assumption that my financial support would continue indefinitely. Without it, they were facing financial ruin within months. By evening, desperation pushed them back to my door. Their knock was hesitant this time, stripped of entitlement. When I opened the door, my expression was calm and unsurprised. "We need to talk," Lauren said, slipping instinctively into her old tone. "I think there were some misunderstandings." I stepped aside to let them in, but my posture remained distant. "Maybe we can work something out, Dad," Daniel added weakly. "Find some middle ground." They sat in my living room like defendants awaiting judgment. Lauren tried tears, guilt, appeals to family loyalty. Daniel tried nostalgia, father-son memories, shared moments, soft voices. I listened without interruption. Then I spoke. "Lauren, you called me mentally incompetent. You attempted to have me legally declared incapable of managing my own affairs. You lied to our entire community about my character." "We can drop all that legal stuff," she interrupted quickly. "We just need help getting back on our feet." "I helped for 35 years, I replied evenly. "You repaid that by calling me selfish and senile." Daniel leaned forward, panic in his eyes. "Dad, please, we are family." I let out a short, cold laugh. Family does not forge documents. Family does not try to steal inheritances. Family does not publicly humiliate one another. Lauren finally broke. "We will lose everything. You should have thought about that before you decided I was too old and useless to deserve my own money." Their voices rose, promises tumbling over one another, but I remained unmoved. Finally, I stood. "The time for working things out is over. You made your decision at Christmas." As they reached their car, Lauren turned back one last time. "This is not over. We know where that money came from. We know what you are really like." From my window, I watched them drive away. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled to Hayes and Morgan. My finger hovered over the call button only briefly. 7 days later, I sat across from Julia Hayes reviewing a thick legal folder labeled Coleman v. Coleman, Financial Recovery Action. "Richard," Julia said, spreading documents across the conference table, "this is one of the most thoroughly documented debt recovery cases I have ever seen. 30 years of meticulous record-keeping. I had spent the week compiling everything, every loan agreement, every promissory note, every signed acknowledgement, every witness signature. My engineering discipline had served me well. I documented their dependence with precision and clarity. The legal foundation is airtight," Julia continued. "These were not gifts. They were structured loans with clear repayment terms. Your son signed acknowledgments for every major transfer." The numbers were staggering. Principal, $280,000 in documented loans over 15 years. Accrued interest at standard personal loan rates, $147,000. Total debt, $427,000. They challenged your mental competence. Julia said calmly, now they face the consequences of that decision. No judge will view this as harassment after what they attempted. I nodded, satisfied. They wanted my money. Now they would pay for what they had already taken. The legal documents were prepared efficiently and without mercy. Formal demand for immediate repayment. Asset attachment orders for their house and vehicles. 30-day ultimatum before forced bankruptcy proceedings. The process server will deliver these by 2 this afternoon, Julia said. By tonight, they will fully understand their position. At their house, Lauren was sorting unpaid bills when the doorbell rang. The uniformed man and his clipboard looked hauntingly familiar. Lauren Coleman, he said, legal documents requiring your signature. Her hand shook as she signed. Daniel appeared behind her as she opened the envelope. $427,000, she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel scanned the paperwork rapidly, legal language blurring together. Dad kept records of everything, he said quietly. Every loan, every payment, every promise to repay. They called 3 different attorneys. Their vehicles were worth maybe $30,000 combined. Lauren's designer belongings barely made a dent. The bankruptcy attorney was blunt. You have 30 days to negotiate or face forced liquidation. Your father holds all leverage. That evening, I sat in my study, reviewing the final phase of my plan. Julia called with an update. Documents were delivered successfully. Their attorney has already reached out about potential negotiations. I leaned back, thinking of Evelyn's last words to me, take care of Daniel, but do not forget to live for yourself. For 35 years, I had ignored that second part. I had funded entitlement, enabled ingratitude, and tolerated disrespect. No more. At 6 o'clock, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Daniel's name. I stared at the screen through 3 full rings, remembering Christmas dinner, remembering the midnight plotting, remembering the lies told about me to our community. I set the phone down without answering. It stopped ringing, then started again. This time, I powered the phone off completely. Outside my window, winter was giving way to early spring. New growth was coming, but first, the dead wood had to be cleared away. They had called me senile, incompetent, selfish. They tried to take my independence, my dignity, and my reputation. They attempted to erase me as a capable human being. Now they were finally learning what it costs to underestimate a man who has nothing left to lose and everything left to prove. The project was finished. Like any engineering problem I had ever solved, every variable had been accounted for. Every calculation had been precise. On the first warm afternoon of late winter, I found myself in the backyard, kneeling in the soil and planting early spring bulbs that would not bloom until the following year. I had learned that some things require patience, proper timing, and faith in the process. The slam of car doors shattered the quiet. Lauren's sharp, aggressive walk across my lawn told me everything I needed to know before she spoke. Daniel followed behind her, clutching a thick folder to his chest like a shield. "We need to settle this right now," she announced. I continued placing bulbs into the earth without looking up. "Good afternoon, Lauren." "Do not play games with us, Richard," she snapped. $400,000. You are trying to destroy us." I stood slowly, brushing dirt from my hands. "I am trying to collect debts you have owed for years." She thrust a stack of papers toward me. "Some of these were gifts. You said so yourself." I glanced at the documents. They were hastily assembled, disorganized, and sloppy. "When did I say that?" I asked calmly. Christmas gifts, birthday money, and grocery assistance were all documented as loans with your husband's signature. Would you like to see the original promissory notes? Daniel stepped forward, his voice raw with desperation. "Dad, think about Noah and Lily. Your grandchildren will lose their home." "I have been thinking about them for years," I replied, meeting his eyes. "That is why I documented everything. I planned for the possibility that you might become ungrateful." Lauren's face twisted with rage. "You planned this from the beginning." "I planned for accountability," I said evenly. "I hoped I would never need it." Daniel's shoulders slumped. "Lauren, we need to stop. This is not working." "Do not you dare give up now," she snapped at him. But something had shifted in Daniel's expression. For the first time in years, he was truly seeing the situation clearly. "Dad," he said quietly, "we were wrong, completely wrong, about everything." Lauren spun toward him. "Daniel, what are you doing?" "I am apologizing to my father for 35 years of taking him for granted," he said, his voice breaking. "And I am finally admitting that you have been manipulating both of us." "I have been fighting for our family," Lauren shot back. "No," Daniel said firmly. "You have been fighting for money. There is a difference." I watched my son stand up to his wife for the first time in their marriage. The moment was painful and hopeful all at once. "Daniel," I said quietly, "I am giving you a choice. Accept responsibility for what you owe and work out a repayment plan, or face bankruptcy alongside Lauren. But the free money ends today." Lauren's eyes burned with fury. "Choose," she hissed, "him or me." Daniel looked between us, his wife of 10 years and the father who had sacrificed everything for him. The hesitation lasted longer than it should have, but when the decision came, it was unmistakable. "I choose what is right," he said. Finally, Lauren's scream of rage echoed across the street. "Fine. Destroy each other. I will not be your servant, Daniel, and I will not watch you grovel to him." She stormed toward the car, throwing her folder onto the lawn. Papers scattered across the grass like dead leaves. "If you are not in that car in 30 seconds, she shouted, "do not bother coming home." The engine roared, tires screeched as she backed out of the driveway and sped away. Daniel did not follow. "She will come back," he said quietly. "Probably," I replied. "The question is whether you will take her back." He knelt beside me and picked up one of the bulbs. "Can I help with the planting?" I handed him a small shovel. "These will not bloom until next spring. Some things need time to grow properly." We worked side by side in easy silence as the sun lowered toward the horizon. My son was truly present for the first time in decades, learning how to plant something that required patience and faith rather than immediate results. "Dad," he said after a while, "I do not know how to apologize for 35 years of selfishness." "Start with today," I said. "Make better choices tomorrow than you made yesterday." "The debt," he said firmly. "I will pay every dollar back. It might take years." "I know," I replied. "That is why you are here planting flowers instead of driving away." Golden evening light washed over the garden, making everything feel possible again. A father and son working together, finally understanding what family actually means. "These really will not bloom until next year," Daniel said, patting soil around the final bulb. Next spring, I agreed. The best things are worth waiting for. He nodded, understanding the meaning beneath the words. Some relationships, like some plants, must die back to the roots before they can grow strong again. As darkness settled over the garden, I looked at the neat rows of planted bulbs and felt something I had not felt in years. Hope. Real family love required respect, not obligation. It demanded accountability, not blind forgiveness. For the first time in decades, I finally had both.